Hi everyone, my name is Vlad Driev, and I'll be talking about IP cameras, a user's guide. Just a few words about myself. I'm a pen tester in CSB. I write articles for the Hacker Hub. I have my own Telegram channel that I co-author with my colleagues. Please subscribe. Right. My question is to you. Have you ever seen similar screenshots in the pen test reports? Please raise your hand. I don't see that many hands raised, but I guess some of you are well aware of the IP cameras issue. I will not be talking about how to get an image from them, but rather how to get full-scale shell and even pivot them. I'm going to give you four real examples: SSH, CVE, hard code in the firmware, and at the very end, we'll try to modify our own firmware and then upload it into the IP camera. So, case one, the initial environment is as follows. You get an access to the interface with the default password. The firmware is protected, which means that you cannot use the archiver to open it up within 5 minutes. So the access technique looks like this. And I guess many of you saw similar IP cameras. You Google the default password, you gain access, and the most logical thing would be to try and activate SSH or Telnet. And in this particular case, we managed to activate SSH in the IP camera. That's exactly what we did. Activate SSH, save it, try to get hooked to it. So we used SSH to get access to the IP camera. The only nuance is that shell is the beach box, and it limits ourselves because something needs to be done with it. There are two possible options. Either we bypass it, or you might recall that SSH out of the box allows us to build a proxy server. And that's exactly what we did. We used the SSH link -D. The local port is used to build the proxy server, and we can then send the traffic to the IP camera because we accessed the shell and we pivoted from there. Case 2 is more complicated. We don't have access to web interface. The SSH is protected, the telnet is protected, and the firmware is protected. So the IP camera is of the same model. We're pen testers. We can Google whether previously there are any previously found vulnerabilities, and this is an example of a vulnerability like that I came across my own project, and we exploited it. Oftentimes, if you have an exploit, you just use a single command, otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. So one of the features is that we have a fully fledged shell. Initially, we used BusyBox in case 1. In case 2, we use SH, and we can use it for more complicated and advanced attacks. And keep in mind that we can also use the SSH with -D flag to send the traffic to the IP camera if you don't need any other capabilities. So we use the RCE on the camera, and we can pivot from there. Now we can move on to case 3. The initial conditions are as follows. We have a default password for the IP camera. The telnet is open, SSH is protected, and surprisingly, we have a non-protected firmware. So we go to the web interface of the IP camera, don't see anything useful there. As was done before, we cannot activate SSH, we cannot activate telnet. The only useful thing that we can find there is identify the IP camera model to Google information on a specific model. We scan it with the mmap, we see that the telnet is available, and the telnet password is not the same as that of the web interface. In other words, in case 1, we were lucky because the passwords were the same. This time, it's not the case. So we Google again the model of the camera. We find the vendor website who sells the IP camera, and this website has the firmware for the camera. It's quite light. We can download it and take a look at the syntax. So that's what we did. We can use 7-zipper or WinRAR archivers to open it up. The rootfs is shown here. We go into the rootc directory. The PSVD file is there, so we click on it, and that's the hash of the root. And I'm a simple man. I see the hash. I brute force it. And indeed, the hash was installed in the firmware for a long time, which means that all the models probably use the same hash. We brute force it, and after that, we can try to gain access to the IP camera with the help of the telnet. We hack the camera, and we get access to the shell through a telnet alone. This time it's a more complicated case. Telnet does not allow us to proxy it as SSH does, so which means that we will have to drop a binary file, a SOX proxy or C2. Well, let's say it's C2, so you can generate it in the following way. And we can also use the Metapredator. I've never seen an antivirus software installed on an IP camera. If you have, please let me know, because I would be interested in learning the details. That's the way we generated the binary file, and then we have to transfer it to the IP camera. We don't need netcat or curl, so we can't use a usual way, but keep in mind that we can just exchange the bytes, and that's exactly what we did. Thanks to my colleague for automating the entire process. From then on, it's quite simple. We get the binary file that we can send to the IP camera and use it to execute the code for proxy purposes and so on. So for the third time, we could gain access to RTSP and pivot it. Case 4, the default password is open, the telnet is closed, the SSH is closed, but the firmware is available on the manufacturer's side. So we scan the ports, we see that SSH is secure, telnet is secure, it's an IP camera given the quite typical port, and it has a web interface, and that's exactly what we'll try to hack. We go to the web, it's the usual admin, we go to, we Google the credentials for the admin account, we try to activate the telnet and SSH, but we fail to do that. So what we do is we identify the firmware tag, and we can upload our own file there so that it refreshes the firmware, and it gives us a chance to take a closer look at the firmware. So we Google it, and on the website of the vendor we find the right firmware that we download and analyze. That's exactly what we did. We use a 7-zip or WinRAR to open the firmware, and did we find anything interesting? Script run.sh is the first interesting thing. There is the telnet D line, but it's encrypted. So the script will be run when the run.sh is downloaded, and telnet D means that if we de-encrypt it and save, then telnet will be launched at the startup. That's exactly what we did. We saved this line. And the second interesting thing is that the rootfs file system was accessible, and the etc directory was also accessible, and the PSVD file was also accessible with the hash of the root. But we're not going to brute force it this time. It doesn't make any sense. We'll just use our own hash, and we know the password to our own hash. So we replace the hash and save it. And I'd like to warn you, because if we just saved everything, we would have broken the camera down. So It was a CRMFS shell, and this is the commonly used file system. We shelled it, and then we could upload the file without fearing any consequences of decommissioning the camera. Don't worry, you'll be able to download my presentation later on. So we go to the firmware section, select the file that we just saved, and press the upload button. Then the camera goes offline, but after a minute it comes online. We try to get access to it. Telnet is activated as expected. The root account can help us use the password that we included into the hash. So it's a full-scale shell access, and this time we already have netcat on the camera, so which means that we can transfer the binary file that we generated. Then we run it and get RCE and full-scale pivoting. To sum up, 4 times we could get access to RC and pivoting on an IP camera, and it was quite simple to do. Oftentimes it's done because default passwords are used in the SSH or Telnet or some hard-coding features in the firmware which is under secured. It's not encrypted, it has no signing, and so on and so forth. Anyway, RC and pivoting were possible in all four cases, and I hope I managed to demonstrate that you should pay more attention to RP cameras because hacking is quite simple. As for the recommendations for the blue team, change the default passwords. It's a must. Refresh and update your software because we exploited CVE, and all you needed was to update the software. Update your hardware because oftentimes vendors do not provide the patches for the all obsolete models, so you need to just install a newer hardware and do pen tests to detect any misconfigurations in your infrastructure and equipment. Just a couple of QRs for great reports. The first article is about the reverse engineering of a popular firmware by a large Chinese manufacturer, and this Chinese hardware is used by many Russian vendors. And the second article is the Opzone article, which dates back to 2022. I recommend reading that. Subscribe to my channel. You will find my contact information and my presentation there. I'll be offline here, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you.